I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sue Barrett and I'm founder and CEO of Barrett Consulting Group. And I'd like to actually welcome everyone to our 2022 Sales Trends event, Decarbonising Sales Operations. What I'd like to do is begin with acknowledging our traditional owners and custodians of this land who have a rich and continuous connection to this country. Today, I actually come to you from the land of the Burong people and the Kulin Nation. They, like the other traditional owners of this land, have a long, rich history in caring for our environment. So with many lessons to be learned from them, I pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. I became consciously aware of climate change and its physical, economic, and moral impacts in 1989. Even though the scientists have been talking about this since the 1970s. Since then, I've been actively informing myself about climate science and the changes required to create a sustainable future for all, with my first act of climate awareness being switching to using cloth shopping bags in 1989, which I've done ever since. My family, my company, and my team have been steadily working towards decarbonising our homes, our lifestyles, and our business operations. We've been doing lots of other things too to drive down our consumption, reduce the use of plastics and paper, and minimising waste. We've been recycling and reusing where we can, as well as making buying, selling, and other business decisions based on the impact on the climate and our environment. We've signed up to join relevant pro-climate action business and community groups and built networks and with others committed to creating clean, renewable, sustainable, and viable economies and societies. One of our biggest investments yet was in 2013 with the development of our Sales Essentials online program. It's an education platform and it's transformed all of our training materials into online resources, thus avoiding printing over 3 tons of paper. Recently, we also applied to become a member of the UN Global Compact. I would also like to highlight that the first issue of the Barrett 12 Sales Trends report published in December 2009 was actually titled No More Business as Usual. Sales Trend 10 actually was a report on what was sustainable selling. It was about forging cultures that are based on legitimate business relationships which serve the environment, people, businesses, and communities. We have talked publicly about the topic of sustainability and climate action ever since. In 2020, our Sales Trends report was titled The Time Is Now, which was a clarion call to highlight that the world's house is on fire and we're running out of time to take purposeful and decisive action in how we do business and sales that create a sustainable and environmentally healthy future for all. Ironically, in 2020, our Sales Trends report was published a few short weeks before the catastrophic 2019-20 bushfires that devastated Australia. And here we are, looking at the 2022 trends off the back of a global pandemic, with the wheels of change getting into high rotation as our sense of urgency for real action is at an all-time high. With more and more investment funds, businesses, communities, and some enlightened governments calling for urgent and immediate action, for example, at least 50% reduction in CO2 emissions by 2030, I am reminded of a saying attributed to Vladimir Lenin: there are decades where nothing happens and weeks where decades happen. We are now in the metaphorical week where decades happen. All the scientific and economic reports state that we have 10 to 15 years to solve this global issue if we are to keep our temperatures below 1.5 degrees of warming and avoid consequences of an uninhabitable planet. Getting to net zero by 2050 will be too late. When it comes to the economic case to decarbonise, the numbers speak for themselves. In Australia, over the next 30 years, if the current emissions policies remain, meaning we do very little, the increasing economic damage of climate change will cost the Australian economy at least $1.89 trillion, or roughly 4% of projected GDP per year. By contrast, achieving net zero emissions by 2050 in Australia would cost $106.8 billion over the next 30 years. This accounts for the loss in exports moving away from carbon, the cost of changing land use, and the transition costs of moving to renewable energy. As John Quiggin, a University of Queensland economist who sits on the board of the Australian Government's Climate Change Authority, says, so when you compare the damages from climate change to the cost of a net zero renewable target, the cost of the target is a hell of a lot less. Instead of almost $2 trillion, it's about $100 billion. It's a no-brainer to move to a clean energy target. And if that wasn't enough to convince us, Bloomberg published findings today showing that data accumulated so far make it clear that the more greenhouse gases a company emits, the lower its stock price relative to its earnings. Essentially, company valuations fall when greenhouse gas emissions rise. The corporate sector indeed has a leading role to play in the world's response to climate change, but so do we all. We all know this is the biggest challenge humanity has ever faced, which can seem overwhelming at the best of times, but here's the opportunity. We have everything we need to solve this crisis now and move into a new phase of human evolution where clean energy and sustainable ways of living and working will be our future. To do this, we need to shift our thinking away from crisis management and doomsaying to an opportunity mindset that capitalises on all the wonderful business and economic opportunities that go with a decarbonised economy and society. As business leaders, sales leaders, and especially sales teams, we are the ambassadors of our organisations, the client-facing leaders and influencers who are on the ground engaging and listening to what's happening and what our clients want. We are the harbingers of opportunity, the bringers of new ideas, innovations, and solutions that can bring about accelerated positive change and adaptation fast. It is only a lack of imagination, determination, and courage that will hold us back. Our 2022 Sales Trends Report is filled with ideas and practical ways to achieve and capitalise on a decarbonised economy. And our 2022 Sales Trends event is a great opportunity to hear from and engage with our wonderful panel and you, our audience, as we explore this topic. This is all about opportunity.